When did we become classified by our skin color? Okay, so you should be coming from part 1 of this series. These videos are a part of one docu-series and should be watched from the beginning in order if you're going to understand what is being presented. So please, if you have not watched part 1, please stop this video and start back from video 1. Okay, well, like I said in part 1, we are not black people. But this statement needs a lot more information in order for the point to be validated and to be true. So the first thing that needs to be done is deal with racism. Because if you're able to understand how this topic has been programmed into us, it can help you better understand what it is that I'm communicating overall. Now let's get a few things out there before we begin. This is in no way seeking to place one group of people over another people. This is not about one group or race of people being better than another. I do realize that the truth can often lead to different types of feelings, but this is not the purpose of this video. The goal of this video is for education. When we are properly educated on subjects, we allow ignorance to slowly go away. In the time that we're in, we are the most formally educated generation in the history of the world. But the vast majority of the world does not know much about race besides skin color or nationality. And in our most modern history, over the past 3 or 4 centuries, the world has been divided by race and dominion of nations. So this is just what we know today, and that's how the majority sees it. To the world, I'm an American by nationality of the country I was born and live in. But to many that see me, I am a black man from Africa. A white man is looked at as a Caucasian from Europe. A Chinese man is an Asian, and a Mexican is a Latino or Hispanic. So at the basis of race and nationality, the world is broken up by continents. People desire to label us and group us in by our skin color, continents, and regions. But is that fair? Is that accurate? The simple answer is no, it is not. But we need to discuss why. Believe it or not, racism is a fairly modern idea. Over the history of our world, people did not classify people by their race or their skin color. People were classified by their tribal names, such as Persians, Greeks, Jews, Saxons, Ethiopians, Egyptians, etc. The world was not divided by the term Negro or Caucasian. The world being divided by color was an idea that originated from white supremacists in Europe after the Renaissance period. Racism is a social construct that helps create white supremacy. And the more we attach ourselves to their way of thinking, the more we are controlled and influenced by white supremacy. For me, a while ago, I made a decision that I was no longer going to be influenced or tied to white supremacy. And because of this decision, my life has drastically changed for the better, as I made many different adjustments to my way of thinking. When you understand the history of this world, the world was drastically changed during and after the period of the Renaissance. The dividing of the world by skin color is just one of those changes. Let's talk about it. We'll start with this guy, Johann F. Blumenbach, a German anthropologist born 1752, died in the year 1840. He was the first person to divide humanity on the basis of skin color. We can attribute much of our racial divide today because of him. Now, don't misunderstand me. Racism, it already existed before this time. There was already a belief in scientific racism, which I will touch on shortly. You see, Blumenbach did not create racism. He simply placed a classification system that is still used today. An official classification of people did not exist before Blumenbach. His work is considered one of the most influential works in regard to race. He classified that there are 5 chief races of mankind. They are the Caucasian or white race. He was the first to use this classification for people of the European origin. He believed the people of the Caucasus Mountains were the most beautiful in the world. I should note that Johann was a Protestant Christian. He was born into a cultured, wealthy Protestant family, a Christian family. It should be understood that racism got its beginning through Christianity, Protestant Christianity. I know that's a hard thing to wrap your head around, and I know that there will be many different types of defenses to this. But you can't escape the facts. Racism was created under Protestant Christians, just the same way that slave masters that enslaved our ancestors were Protestant Christians.
That's scripture.
So let me address the elephant in the room. As I go through this, I will be using scriptures from the Bible. And if you're new to my channel, depending on your influence, you may try to tie me to the same Christianity. And that might be a good thing for you or a bad thing. Let me explain this now, though. I have nothing to do with this Protestant Christianity that was spread throughout the world, and I categorically reject the foundation that it represents. But, and this is a big but, this does not mean that I reject the Bible. These are two different things. Please do not tie me to organized religion, because as I will present through this series, the way we got here is through these organized religions. So if you hear me bring up the Bible or the scriptures, and you think I'm trying to make you a Christian, you are incorrect. And if you're concerned that I'm not trying to make you a Christian, I have made videos like this one that explains my issues in case you want to understand my views further or why I don't want you to be a Christian. That's just a label. I do not have a problem with the Bible. I very much believe in it. I very much lived through it. I have a problem with organized religion that has spread through the label of Christianity. That's the problem. Either way, what I ask is that you do not place me in any box that you may want to place me in. You see, if I was in a certain box, I wouldn't have to make this video, because there are plenty of people from the many different boxes and groups that have tried to speak about these things. You see, the reason I call this truth unedited is because most people give truths that they edit, because certain truths are hard to deal with. It's hard talking about race. You know, in the comment section, I'm going to deal with a lot of slack. I understand this. But I believe that when you withhold truth or you edit it because it makes things uncomfortable or controversial, this is when you are compromised. Edited truths are another form of a lie. And for me, I have no tolerance for it. I can't live with it. So understand, it could be an easy detail to just leave out the fact that racism was started by Protestant Christianity. In fact, it was started by a Protestant Christian in the nation where Protestant Christianity was started from with Martin Luther's Reformation. This was Germany. But it's important to understand that religion is baked up within all of this, which is why these truths are so hard to accept or reject. Let me keep going, though. Like I said, Blumenbach started the classification of people by skin color. An official classification of people did not exist before Blumenbach. His work is considered one of the most influential works in regard to race. He classified that there are 5 chief races of mankind. Again, they are the Caucasian or white race. He was the first to use this classification for the people of European origin. Like I said, he believed the people of the Caucasus Mountains were the most beautiful in the world. This is where the term Caucasian comes from. Then he had the classification of Mongolians, or the yellow race, which included all of East Asia and some of Central Asia. Then we have the Malayan or brown race, which included Southeast Asia and Pacific Islanders. Then the American, which was the red race. This was the American Indians. And lastly, the Ethiopians, or the black race, which was the sub-Saharan Africans. This man was a white supremacist and considered the Caucasian to be the original race. So when we start talking about racial divide, this is where the conversation starts from, right here. He basically color-coded the people of the world. He was a racist. And this should not be hard to imagine that there were Christians that were racist. The slave owners themselves who owned slaves were Christians. The KKK themselves were Christians. So being that now that the world denounces all these things, when the modern world was being created, these ideas were actually embraced. It's cowardice and hypocrisy to ignore this. Now, when this color-coding system by skin color started, we are talking about a time period in history that has mixed around a great deal of change. You see, America was just about to gain its independence and become its own nation. The Rothschild family was about to emerge on the scene with their wealth transfer from the powerful German family of the Hesses. Again, who, by the way, was another huge supporter of the Protestant Reformation a century earlier. Freemasonry came out in the open from the shadows just 60 years before this, and the world was being influenced by the Renaissance period, where they began centuries of religious indoctrination with the humanist movement, reimagining biblical figures, painting the figures of the Bible in their own images. Also, to add with that, the letter J was created during the Renaissance, so the name of Jesus was now officially made possible. Remember, the sound of the letter J was never heard before the Renaissance period. What I am saying is that this period was a time of great foundational change. The way our world is today would not be so without this time period in history. I have made a series that covers these things more in depth if you want to understand these things further. Like, I've covered the Protestant Reformation in depth, as well as the Renaissance movement, how the Europeans made God in their own image. I've covered all these things. So if you want to study those things on your own, there are playlists for you. But understand, the world was changing at this time. So after all these things were coming together, all these changes were happening in the world, the most important being America was going to be its own nation governing itself within its Masonic principles. Racism was created as a mindset that would now divide the world, and the Protestant Christian Europeans who were in control of the world at the time made a doctrine that made them superior to all. They changed the way we thought about things. Let me give you an example. Do you know how people say someone is fair? Do you know before white supremacy, this actually just meant beauty? But after this racial movement, this meaning of fair was changed to mean white because they made their skin the definition of what beauty was in the world. So now when somebody says fair-skinned or something's fair, they're talking about white.
Our obsession with light skin has been around for centuries.
This is white supremacy. These are just mental mindsets that were created through racism. And listen, I get it. It may make you uncomfortable to hear about it, especially depending if you are a victim to it or you benefited from it. But these things are just the facts of our world that we can't get around. We can only understand it and learn from it as we ourselves grow. Let's keep going. After Blumenbach, there were more contributors to the mental mindset of race. We have a 19th century French aristocrat named Joseph Arthur de Gobineau. This man was known for his influence on legitimizing racism through scientific racism and developing the theory of an Aryan master race. He wrote a 1,400-page book named An Essay on the Inequality of the Human Races, which argues that there are differences between human races, that civilizations decline and fall when the races are mixed, and that the white race is superior. He used the scientific racism theory, which was a belief that evidence exists to support and justify racism. Simply, racial discrimination, racial inferiority, and racial superiority. His doctrine justified all these things. Scientific racism was common from the 1600s to the end of World War II after the fall of the Nazis. It was publicly denounced as racist, but obviously held as a belief in many other influencers still to this day. I mean, after World War II, we were still dealing with racism in America. Anyways, it was this J.A. Gobineau, that really helped legitimize racism as being valid. And there were many others like Houston Stewart Chamberlain, 1855 to 1927. This man wanted to advance the supremacy of the white Nordic race and its culture. The point is that due to the influence of people like these men and others is where we get the division of race today. It's not me. You want to blame me talking about it, but it's not me that made it up. It's these men. They added a psychological value to race that made people believe it was so. Basically, being that at the time, European civilizations were dominating much of the world through inhabiting foreign lands and possessing major breakthroughs in technology, to them, it meant that they were obviously superior and others were inferior. This was racism, and it led to a horrible racial philosophy, and eventually it was used as a scapegoat that was set to start World War II. What they did was create a mental mindset that was taught amongst the communities that were leading the changing world. They were teaching a justification for hate and oppression, and it made it very simple for the masses to follow. The Europeans who were building the new world believed they were the superior race, and they were given this power because of their adherence to their Christian faith, and the others who they were better than were given to them to rule over because they were evil and they were beneath them. I mean, people still feel this way today, whether they say it or not. They believe that whites are the superior race. I just remember a clip on social media that said the same thing. This girl said the same thing.
Is y'all's race or ethnicity?
Caucasian. Caucasian.
I gotta guess. If you guys could be one race for a day, what would you be and why?
We're the superior race. Like, not as in like that.
What? Oh, that's mad.
We are the.
That was my German
I'm not going to.
One thing you need to understand is that hate is not just a mental thing. It is very much spiritual, even more than mental. It is not just a learned behavior, but it is spiritual, that is taught through demons and spirits. It may have seemed that the hate that people had against the Negroes was just about skin color. But when you take a step back and really think about it, that thought is really dumb. If hate is spiritual and is taught by demons, what does Satan and his demons care about skin color? Satan doesn't hate skin color. He hates Yahuwah, the Most High, the God of the Bible. He is against everything that Yahuwah loves. And you really need to understand that, because if you really fall for that lie that these people hated us because of our skin color, it can provoke you while not truly understanding what truly is happening. Now, please listen, I'm not saying that these people did not and do not hate you and that skin color was not involved. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that these people were easily manipulated by the devil and demonic spirits to hate you, and they were told it was about our skin color, while the true reason was held from them. They didn't know why they really hated you. They just were told it was skin color, and they accepted it. They were just easily used puppets for a satanic lie that was kept from the light. The lie around skin color and racism was something that they created, and it was a great cover-up that is still able to be used to this day.
To this day! To this day!
When this series is done, and you actually understand why you were actually hated, it will make a lot more sense than it being about skin color. I mean, these people can think that they're better than us, or whatever. I mean, that's them.
And evidently he feels that they will be accepted socially. And I don't feel that they ever will be. But the whole trouble with this integration business is that in the end, it probably will end up with mixing socially. And you will have, well, I think their aim is mixed marriages and becoming equal with the whites.
But the hate that they had, and many still have today, this was not and is not only about skin color. If you fall to their level of thinking, you are just a victim of white supremacy. Understand, any view of racism, black people, white people, any kind of racial division, all of it is a very modern idea. It is not how the world viewed and classified people before this thing was created. Now, that does not change anything, obviously. Knowing this will not change racism today, but it should change many people's understandings of where these thoughts come from and why. If you believe that your race is superior, it's because of the theories of white supremacists starting from the 17th century. Looking at the white race as the ones that are able to get it together and hold jobs and be civilized is an idea of white supremacy. This is not a natural view that has been held since the beginning of time. Or let's flip it. The reverse can be said. If you believe the black man is superior because he's more physically endowed, this is a twisting of white supremacy. You only see skin color because a white supremacist classified people in this way, and the world eventually adopted his thinking. When you think like that, you're a white supremacist, whether you're Negro or Caucasian or whatever you are. When you use skin color as a definition, you are a white supremacist, or you think like one. And then how this grew was formal education, and then we had mind-controlling programs like the Cosby Show. They kept these classification systems going. You see, the powers that be want us to think in this way, and it's all for a purpose of division, without real understanding. This is racism, and that's the condensed history of how it came to be. It's important that you understand that this way of thought is about the same age as the United States. It's not a mindset that has been found in the world for 1,000 years, but a couple hundred years. And it was put in motion and grew over time to take us to the time that we're in right now. Right now, the powers of the world are reaping the benefits of their systems that they planted in long before. They're just now seeing the harvest grow from it. The more that you look at the world in terms of skin color, you are looking at the world through the eyes and mindset of white supremacy. And here's the crazy thing. Even if you don't believe or agree with white supremacy, you can still be a mental victim to it because you subtly hold on to their mindsets, their views, their values, the ways that they look at the world. And the worst part is most of you aren't able to even see it, or you're not even aware of it. I find that very large in the baby boomer generation. They're so pro-black this and pro-black that, but everything they talk about is based on a level of view of white supremacy. They look at the world through the eyes that white supremacy has taught them. You're a victim to it, even though you're against it. You are a victim. So when we say a black person or a white person, this is not a mindset founded on truth. It is a mindset based on traditions of men that have to do with satanic agendas of placing a certain people over another in order to push forward an idea of supremacy. These values and mindsets are now cemented in the hearts and minds of the world population, while the doctrine was never formally taught. We just grew up in the classifications and we passed it down through the generations. And the thing is that the Negro community, we're the biggest losers of this mentality because we look at ourselves in the way our oppressors have told us to view ourselves in. You must understand, before this mentality was created and way before the transatlantic slave trade, our ancestors never held such a weak view of themselves that they would only classify themselves by their skin color. The other nations of the world, though they use this classification against us, and they may refer to themselves by a skin color, for instance, Americans do call themselves white men or white women as a description. They still do not fully adopt this, though, to their history or their identity. I don't think they teach their children that they are white people, but they tell their children their family comes from this place or that place. Asians definitely don't teach it this way to their families. Even other Africans that come to the United States don't refer to themselves by their skin color. They teach it by their country, and many of them know the tribes that their families descend from in Africa. The Negro is the only segment of the world population who refers to themselves by a skin color. And it happens to be that this classification was built to say that we are inferior and less than everyone else. We classify ourselves as the losers, and then we live through this reality, equating our lives and our successes based upon the race that says that they are superior to us. I said that real fast. I'm going to repeat it. We classify ourselves as the losers, and then we live through this reality, equating our lives and our successes based upon the race that says that they are superior to us. This is what we are doing, and most of us don't recognize that this is what we are doing. Understand, every time you call yourself a black person, you are calling yourself inferior. And I'm not coming at you because, like I said, even with me knowing this, I still mess up and do this too, because the programming is really deep and is really embedded. And because it's so generally accepted, it's very hard to escape it. We just conform to it. For me personally, I'm doing my best to mentally retreat from this. And I do truly feel if more of us live in the truth, we will be a support system for each other to hold ourselves accountable to not use this classification anymore. When we say black people, if we're going to use it at all, this needs to be referred to the Negroes that are assimilated and mentally controlled by their oppressors, and they like it. Those in the boule, or those in politics, or part of that Black Greek letter organization. I'm talking about those that are conquered, those that accept it, and those that promote it. Let them be black people. We that are awoken to the truth can no longer be black people, nor can we accept for others to classify us in this way. When we grow in strength through this standard, our enemy will have a very hard time dealing with us, which is why these kind of messages are not mainstream. And if it is heard, it usually comes from some type of radical that makes you scared to walk in it because there's some kind of other hate attached to it. I'm not teaching you to hate anything or anyone. I'm just teaching you to not be mentally controlled and used as a tool. What I'm saying is that we are not black people. When we use this term of black people, we are using the classification of our skin color as a tool of white supremacy, and we are admitting that we are victims to it. If you no longer desire to be a victim to it, regardless of your nationality or skin color, do not refer to people by their or your skin color. This is a tradition of men, evil men. We are encouraged in the scriptures to reject profane and old women's fables and exercise ourselves rather unto righteousness. That's 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. We are also told to not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind, that we may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Elohim. As Romans chapter 12, verse 2. You see, people use these scriptures all day long, but it never goes that deep, and it really needs to. Racism is a trained mental thought given to us by the men of this world, by racists who are used by Satan to create a justification for spiritual and physical and mental hate. The foundation of it sets a divide and keeps people blind to the truth of this world. And when you look at the effects of it, this doctrine is unproportionately directed at and affects one segment of the world population more than any other group, and that is the Negro. So be done with it. We are not black people. Say it yourself and believe it. You are not a black person. But in order to understand this deeper and really apply it, it is important to understand how you should actually look at people. Because, listen, the world is divided. You can't get around that. Everyone is not the same. Don't get it twisted. There is division in this world. But in order to really understand it correctly and view the world in the way it should be viewed, it's important to view the world through reality and not the false social construct of race and skin color that keeps us deceived and controlled and conquered. So in the next part, we're going to review how the world viewed each other before the social construct of skin color and race was created. So please, continue on in this series to part 3 and understand this topic even deeper. Remember, right now, many of you are the dry bones. And as Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 11 says, you may believe your hope is lost and you yourselves are cut off, but I am here to show you the complete opposite is true. Your hope is not lost and you yourselves are not cut off if you just awaken and be who you truly are. So I will show you. Click the link to the next video and let's talk some more.
Oh, I say it again. You've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok. This is what he does.